Chris is going to present first, and his topic is the idea of getting out of presentation and into process with coaching and teaching. And then Conrad's going to present second. His topic is rear leg steering and conversation and uses of rear leg movement. So Chris, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Hey, so I'm going to kick this off with a video. I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share. I think I've got, it's all age appropriate because I see a very young instructor on the screen here. Hold on one second, guys. Go desktop. Yes, share that. And let's see if I can find it again. Where's my PowerPoint thing? Oh, there it is. Wow, I should have cleaned up my screen, my desktop. Sorry, guys. Can you guys see that? You see the slide? You guys can take your mics off. I honestly don't mind the communication.
Yeah. Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're just watching this one slide. Here we go.
I was born in 2005. The year North Korea announced they have nuclear weapons.
The last few weeks, a large amount of ugly, malicious information has
The same year, Michael Jackson was found not guilty of child molestation charges. 1 year after I was born, the opposition parties in Singapore won 2 seats in the parliament. Then 1 year later, Apple unveiled iPhone. I belong to Gen Z, a generation born with complete technology. We had PC smartphones, gaming devices, tablets, MP3 players, and the internet. We naturally multitask. Text, read, watch, and work at the same time. A skill that stuns the adults. We like to express our feelings and thoughts and share them with the world. In our lifetime, we will not send a single letter by mail. But we would spend at least 20% of our time on social media. Having too many gadgets also has a bad impact. We rather stay indoors and use our gadgets than play outdoors and be active. We have terrible social skills. We are 10 times more likely to smile to a handphone than a person. Our attention span is as short as a goldfish. You have 10 seconds before you lose us.
Okay, let me stop the share. Could you guys see and hear most of that? Did that go okay? Oh yeah, awesome. So it's a video that I love because it reflects kind of the change that started to happen along with technology. So it's an attention span thing. It's massively challenged right now, and something that each of us, as especially those of us who work with children, but even adults, attention span has changed dramatically. So it's funny because I was thinking about one of the statements he said in there. They'll spend at least 20% of their life or on social media, right? Or on technology, which is wild. And I think that number has actually grown since this video was made. So if you follow any of these metrics with marketing demographics, it's kind of interesting. And the more you learn, the more you understand what's going on in the world. So on that note, anybody pull anything unique out of that video? Key takeaways?
Yeah, it's probably more than 20% now with TikTok.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, my kids, I was thinking about it today, like with the whole home quarantine thing, my kids are fine, man. They're just playing more video games, a little more social media. I'm battling to get them to go outside and play because it just falls right in line with who our children really are becoming largely. Anybody else?
What is the Generation Z span?
Okay, so it's actually a mix. So the experts started saying it was anyone born after the year 2000, and they've expanded it into the 90s, which is strange. So there's like this overlap between millennials and Gen Zs. But it just depends on who you're talking to and how broad they're trying to reach. It's really, realistically, what they're saying, the people who broaden it are the ones who say that it started with the internet. So if you were born into the internet, so to speak. So if you were a child or a baby when the internet started, which was like what, 95, I think, right around there. Then some people say that's when Gen Z started. Most people agree that it's the early 2000s. So there's kind of a broad range. It's kind of interesting. I went to an IASC, which is the International Association of Skateboard Companies presentation. They do a seminar every year where they do inductees to the Skateboarding Hall of Fame and all that kind of stuff. And they did some really nice presentations, and they brought in a marketing expert who, she was very well versed in this, and she kind of explained that range, which kind of planted that seed for me to want to go and research a little more. But look it up. I would say that it's anybody that's born into the ease, into the ease of technology, which is a smartphone or a device that you can carry where you have the internet at your fingertips almost all the time. So look at children who are born into that. And that's why this video, I think, nails it with 2005, because that's literally when Apple launched their iPhone. iPods were pretty prevalent at that time and growing more prevalent. And now smartphones are everything. But the reason why I bring this up is only to point out that attention span has changed dramatically. And it's something that we battle with all the time. If you were here for the Science of Fun presentation, I talked about that every 3 seconds model that the gaming industry uses. It's real. It's not a joke. It's real. It's exactly what they target. And that is how our brains are being impacted and managed and affected by the world around us right now. So on that note, what is this whole getting out of presentation and into process concept? It's the simple thought. I'll make it really simple. It's the idea that if you spend the majority of your time talking like I am right now, rather than allowing the group that you're talking with, and I say with because it's not talking to, it should be with, to engage, then you're in presentation, right? And you're in presentation probably too long. And that time span is different for different people, for different types of learners, for different ages, for even from a student to an athlete, it can be different. I mean, there's so many varieties of people and the way they think and the way they're built that measuring that is kind of the critical concept here. So I'm going to throw that back to you guys. How do you know when? What are triggers for you? What are signs that you've talked too long, or you've spent too much time presenting on an idea, or too much time breaking down a skill and trying to simplify it and yada, yada, yada? What does that look like?
I would say, Chris, to that point, I would say if I'm the presenter, it looks like me repeating myself a little bit too much. And if I'm in the audience, it means that I don't have any more questions about the content, but I don't fully buy in yet because I haven't seen it in action.
Very good. Wow. Dude, nailed it. Okay, you're welcome at all my presentations. Who else? Did anybody else have a thought on that? Like, what does it mean? LaCroix?
I feel like it's when I have explained it. Like, I've gone through it a couple of times in my mind already as I've said the things. Maybe I'm repeating that stuff in my mind, or maybe it's like I'm boring myself already, because I'm like, I was born in so I'm not quite on that Gen Z, but I'm definitely in that millennial area. Yeah. And I definitely have that, like, a little bit less attention span than maybe an older generation. So if I'm already feeling it, then kids are definitely.
May I ask what year you were born in?
93. Okay,
yeah. Wow. I graduated high school in 94. So, and then Clay, what were you going to say? Clay Campbell. You're muted. I can't hear you. Try it now. Nope, no sound. All right, no sound from Clay. Sorry. Maybe fix it and then we'll come back to you. So I think, go ahead, Lynn.
So I was reading this book today, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, good one.
They did this study about Sesame Street. Has anybody read that book? Just so I'm not repetitive.
It's okay. Share it. It's a great book.
All right. So do you remember the part in that book where they were testing the Sesame Street episodes and like changing around the order and seeing if there could be distractors and how much attention people pay? And how the multitasking is for little kids? Basically, they were saying before they started, they did these 5 test episodes and they had these kids watch it. And the kids didn't pay any attention. So they made a bunch of changes. And after they made those changes, they could have the episode playing and then also something distracting, such as a slideshow or like a bunch of fun toys for the kids to play with, or nothing. And the kids were able to multitask by themselves, like without anyone saying anything about it. And they got the same out of the episode, whether they were watching only the episode or whether they were playing or also watching slides.
It's so brilliant. There's another study sort of like that I read where they took children and adults and they compared their ability to create uses for paper clips. So they put a group of adults around a table, a group of children around a table, and they gave them that idea. How many uses can you come up with for a paperclip? And the adults in an hour hit about 79, as I recall. And the children never stopped coming up with ideas. And because they were able to play with those paper clips like toys, they had the paper clips in hand. They turned the paper clips into animals, into all kinds of things. It was endless and unlimited when the children were able to engage with something, which is why I see Corey's eating right now. I tend to, even when I do a presentation indoor, I tend to leave things out for people to play with and think about. Like I'll pass out ping pong balls, or, in a small group, I'll have a Rubik's Cube. And I just watch for the person who picks it up and needs to be duly engaged, because when they're in that environment, they can actually remain more creative, which means they're going to be more engaged. So to that end, think about the beginner lesson real quick. I'll throw this at you guys. Raise your hand if you've ever given an introduction that's too long. So does anybody ever go too far into their introduction, right? That's the question. I travel around the country and I see people, I see instructors literally spend as much as 15 to 30 minutes standing in circles or small groups or lines with their students. No joke. Imagine that. How many of you guys, how many of you are trainers at your home resort? So if you're a trainer, or you've ever been a trainer or a supervisor, okay. So for the trainers in the group and anyone else, you can play along with this. How many of you have ever observed a lesson from start to finish? I mean, literally from start to end, without interrupting, no interruption. That's good. And when you do that, you learn things that most people never get to see, right? It takes time to collect data and it takes patience because you want to over engage. But the key is, the more I've gone around and observed lessons across the country, the most obvious standout piece is that people spend all their time in the introduction process rather than getting engaged in actually skiing or snowboarding. And that's the key, right? That's the critical piece. So I was thinking about it too. With my athletes, most of them do not want long explanations. Some of them do, but most of them don't, right? So let me ask you this. How long should it take to explain a topic or a skill before you try it, before someone tries it? You can unmute and just talk if you want to.
6 seconds.
6 seconds. That's a good guess. What do you guys think?
I'll go to your video game thing. 3 seconds.
3 seconds. Okay, here I'm gonna throw another slide up for you guys with a little bit of data. So let me get into screen share here real quick, and we can play off this little slide here. Let me see if I can make this bigger. Can you guys see what's on the screen there? Is it large enough for you to read it, or should I expand it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So right here, you can see on the second part of the slide, according to research, attention span has markedly decreased in 15 years, right? So it's gone from 12 seconds to 8.25 seconds. You have about that long before someone starts thinking about everything else in their life. Just about that long. And if you don't change the game and re-engage in that time frame, you are going to lose them. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing sometimes to let people wander off and think about things and daydream. It just means that's about the frequency. So when you present something new, how long does it take for someone to get engaged? So on that note, okay, I want you guys right now, do a little test. Okay, do you guys have a phone or a watch you can look at with a timer?
Yeah.
Get a timer out. Get your stopwatch out and just go. Okay. I'm going to tell you guys a story. When I say start, I want you to start the timer. I'm going to tell you guys a story. Okay. And I'm thinking of a random story right now. It's going to come to me in just a second. I'm going to tell you guys a story, and I want to know when your mind drifts. When your mind drifts for the first time, I just want you to hit pause. Can you do that, or stop your stopwatch, or check your time? Write your time down. Make a mental note of it. Okay, you guys ready? Give me 1 second. Okay, I got a good story for you. Go. So we're in Ushuaia. It's national team. It's the final year of national team. And it happens to be Tony Macri's birthday. Now, he was a traitor because he went from the U.S. team and joined the New Zealand team, because at the time, the U.S. wasn't planning on paying for us to go to Ushuaia. So Tony had a full ride with New Zealand. He made the right choice, right? He got there. And then last minute, of course, the national office changed their minds and started paying for it. But when we were down there was one night when we were celebrating Tony's birthday, and Lane Clegg had this incredible idea where we're all just going to keep buying drinks for Tony until he threw up, passed out, or died. And I remember feeling so incredibly terrible because I kept buying drinks and I kept making sure. And then I made other people in the bar go and take Tony. It was a crazy night. And I'm pretty sure we might have wrecked him pretty hard. Okay, I'm done. Now, how many of you hit pause during the story? Well, what was your time frame? If you hit pause, unmute and just say the time.
20 seconds.
25 seconds.
25. Anyone else?
20 seconds.
21 seconds.
21. Anyone lower than 21?
19.
19. Anyone else?
18.
18. Is 18 the lowest?
17 and a
You
half.
said, and
17 and a half. Somebody had to pull out
Michelle
the number.
says 15.
15. Wow, I lost Michelle the fastest. Okay, so clearly she doesn't care about cool stories from Ushuaia. Thanks a lot, Michelle. No, but the point is, right, you can see that your attention span, you are trained learners and you're trained trainers. Your attention span is pretty large if you think about it, right? You actually retain more information than most because you practice this. Fair enough? Okay, we're gonna do another little creative game. Okay, are you guys ready? Has anybody ever heard of, I'm gonna stop my screen share here for a second. Has anyone ever heard of a loci memory system or the mind palace? They're both similar memory methods. So Claire's raising her hand a little bit. She's like, kinda. Okay, so this is a really interesting tool for remembering things, like remembering names. And I wanna get you guys back into process here, right? I'm trying to dip in and out of process and presentation. You're probably catching on to that by now. But the mission is, how long can I go in process versus presentation before I lose Michelle, who said 15 seconds. All right, so what I want you guys to do is we're gonna use about 5 body parts, okay? Things that we're really familiar with. We'll use the top of our head, okay? We will use, there are children on the call, so we can't do anything weird. Top of our head. We'll use our hands, okay? We'll use our chest. We'll use our knees, and we'll use our feet, okay? I want you to remember that piece of it, okay? Don't worry about anything else. I'm gonna go back to screen share. You guys all tracking with me so far? We're gonna get in screen share here, and I'm gonna show you some data on the screen, okay? You guys ready? And I want you to remember what you can. I'm gonna basically rattle through. Don't worry about anything else, but remember what you can. So in 2000, the attention span average was 12 seconds. In 2015, it was down to 8.25. It's lower now. In fact, the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Okay. Now, I want you to remember these things. Human beings are, and no making notes, no cheating. Human beings are forgetful a lot, right? They forget a lot. 25% of teens forget major details of close friends and relatives. 7% of people forget their own birthday from time to time. And 39% of Americans have forgotten one basic piece of information or lost one everyday item in the past week. Okay, you guys ready? And stop share. So nobody made notes or took a picture, right? Okay, so I want you guys right now, just in your heads, run back through the number of things that we just did. What were the key details? How many details were there? Does anybody remember? Turn your mic on and say yes or a number if you remember.
I mean, I feel like there was 3 details after the first initial 3 details that you told us.
7% of people forget their own birthday from time to time.
Okay, don't say it. Don't say it out loud. That's good. I'm glad you remember that. Lynn says 5, or is that just your hand up?
6 with supplementary detail.
Okay, don't say anything else. Just give it the number. Okay, so 6.
Chris
says 6. And you guys aren't looking at the picture, right? You're not. No one made notes. Tony,
11.
what was your number?
11.
Mike and Tony both say 3. Okay,
Kevin
so
says
that's a
11.
pretty big range. What'd you get, Kevin? How many?
I said 11.
11 different things. Okay. Anybody else?
I'm gonna go 7. I don't know.
7. I don't know. Right. And now, is it fading farther from your memory? Now, don't say them out loud, but think to yourself, how many of those things can you actually remember right now? Honestly, remember the detail of what we said. It's one thing to remember the number, the quantity, which is hard enough. Another thing to remember, it's 50-50 or less in some cases. I just read it and I think I've forgotten at least some of it. Now I got it.
I'm definitely more visual, so that the fact that you put it up on the screen, I'm like, oh, it's a little more ingrained in my brain than if you had just told me. If you had just told me, I would have remembered probably one thing.
Right. So
that's how my brain works.
So hitting people on multiple directions with multiple ideas is pretty critical, right? Okay, so we're going to do it in a different way. Okay, I'm not going to show you the pictures right now. I'm going to make you guys create a picture in your mind using those body parts. Okay. To be clear, there were 6 things that we discussed. There were 6. So if you said 6, winner, chicken dinner. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put down in our feet the idea of in the year 2000 a 12-second attention span on average. Now, what I want you guys to do is I want you to visualize how annoying and frustrating it would be to have something digging into your foot. Just like the idea of people who can't pay attention longer than 12 seconds. So imagine something just digging in there that's in there. It's like it's stuck in your shoe, right? You got one in each shoe. It's totally bothering you. And down in your feet, that whole idea of a 12-second limited attention span is driving you crazy. It's in your shoe. Do you guys got it? You got something bothering you in your shoe. Good. Okay. We're going to work our way up to our knees. Okay. Now in our knees, we're going to kneel down. Like we're going to bow for the King of England, or the Queen of England rather right now, because it's the Queen, right? We're going to kneel down. We're going to bow for the Queen of England because the Queen of England has decreed that the 8.25 second span is no longer going to be legal in the United Kingdom. Are you guys with me? So the Queen of England is telling you the 8.25 seconds is no good. You just can't do it. And we're down on our knees. So right there at our knees, we get down on our knees, we're bowing. The Queen of England has said 8.25 seconds, no good. We're going to change that. You guys got it? So far, so good. So underneath our feet, we've got that annoying 12-second attention span, that 8. And then when we kneel down on our knees, we're bowing to the Queen of England because she's saying 8.25 seconds is no longer acceptable. Now I want you to go up and in your mouth. I want you to imagine, go ahead and visualize this and do it with your mouth. I want you to close your mouth and imagine you have a goldfish swimming around in your mouth, and you're trying not to let it tickle the back of your throat or slip down your throat and swallow a live goldfish whole, because that would be disgusting. You guys got that goldfish in your mouth? Now it's slithering around in there. It's tickling your cheeks a little bit. It's climbing under your tongue. You guys, are you with me? So that goldfish is in your mouth, right? We're in our mouth now. Ready? Our next one. I want you guys to think you have 10 fingers. So in our hands, 10 fingers. 25% of teens, and teens kind of sounds like tens. So tens and teens in your hands, 10 fingers, teens, 25% of teens forget major details of close friends and relatives. So these teens can't even hold on to their family with their 10 fingers. Do you guys got it? They can't remember their friends and family with their 10 fingers. Everybody got that? 25% of teens can't remember till their whole, and can't hang on to an idea with all 10 fingers in both hands. You got it? Okay. Now we're going to go on to the next one. 7% of people forget their own birthday. So I want you guys to put this up in your head. On top of your head, you're wearing a birthday hat, one of those stupid pointy birthday hats, right? You got the stupid pointy birthday hat, and you can't remember what day your birthday falls on. So remember that on your head, the hat, the birthday, it all connects. And then we'll use our chest. 39% of Americans have forgotten one basic piece of information or lost one everyday item in the past. So right here, I want you to envision that you have a necklace that you normally wear around your neck and it hangs down at your chest and you can feel it on your chest. Maybe for some of you, it's a locket. Maybe for some of you, it's a cross. Maybe for some of you, it's whatever. But I want you to visualize that. Now let's make it, you know what? Let's all make it a locket. You guys with me? Let's open up that locket. And inside that locket is a picture of Tony Macri and Mike kissing. They're kissing in the picture of the locket that you're wearing around your chest. Can you guys visualize that? Put it in the locket. You guys got it? And Corey's like, no, I can't do it. All right. Now, I want you to breathe for a second. Are you ready? What piece of information did we wear on our head?
Birthday ones.
7% of people forget their birthdays.
Oh my gosh, Corey nailed it, right? Okay. Now, what did we crush or what was in our shoes that was just, what's bothering us down at our feet? Who's got it?
12-second attention span.
Yes, 12-second attention span. Way to nail it, baby. Okay. And then why would we be on our knees?
Because we're bowing to the Queen of England because she said 8.25 is no longer acceptable.
Right. And what's so important about our mouth?
There's a goldfish we don't want to swallow.
And that goldfish, who remembers why that goldfish is in our mouth? What was the key detail there?
Got a really short attention span. 9 seconds.
Nailed it. 9 seconds. That's amazing. Okay. And then what did we have? What are we wearing at our chest?
Tony and Mike.
A locket of Tony and Mike kissing with a picture in it of them kissing.
I'm going to forget about it.
And what was that attached to? You guys remember?
39% of
That's
people.
right. 39% of people, of Americans, have forgotten
An everyday.
What's that?
Forget an everyday. Forget.
Yeah, one everyday item. That's right. Okay, and the last one. What's so important about our hands?
Teens.
25% of teens can't remember a detail about a family or friend.
That was amazing. Okay.
Of 10 fingers.
10 fingers. It reminds you of teens. The teens can't hang on to their family and friends. Did you guys have to make notes to remember those things? It's
No,
weird,
we
right?
associated it with something else.
That's it. People remember things through activity, through profound story, through profound experience, right? So I spend a lot of my time. I like to tell people that I build relationships through hand plants. Tony might even remember this. Like, my favorite thing to teach in the world is a hand plant. I love teaching hand plants. I will teach you a hand plant in under 10 minutes. I don't care who you are. It doesn't matter who you are. Under 10 minutes, you'll do a hand plant. Now, the reason why I love this is because the second I teach you a hand plant, you and I have become friends for life. Because what I do is I memorize the place, the location, and I tell stories as we're learning the hand plant. So that way I can remember people's names. That's what works for me. When I like to think about, well, and I'll have you guys do this rather than me giving it away. Let's re-engage. Imagine giving an introduction where you don't present anything. Is it possible to give an introduction, to start teaching something without presenting anything? Would it be possible to go right into process, much like this loci memory method, right? Would it be possible to go right into process without presenting anything?
I would say, yeah.
How do you guys see that happening? Visualize it or tell it to me.
The thing I see is getting off the gondola and telling the person ride down to the light post, for instance.
So you just start writing. That would be one way to do it. Okay.
You could do a story, for example, the Blue's Clues thing in the tipping point.
Yeah.
You can have someone be like, we're going to go on an adventure. The first thing we're going to do is find something that's black and white. What's black and white? And I mean, we'd use a snowboarding example, obviously, and have a few questions and they can figure it out by deducing from what they've learned.
Right. Who else? How many of you, let me ask you this. If you were meeting a group lesson, you all teach group lessons still, right? Does anybody in here like totally foreign to a group lesson? Okay, good. So you're meeting a group lesson. right? How long does it take you to get from 0 to snowboarding? And snowboarding can be just doing something with a snowboard, right? Being on a snowboard, balancing, playing, doing tricks, playing games, whatever. How long does it take? What do you think the timeline is for you?
About 1 minute.
Corey says 1 minute. Who else? Who else has got a number? I guess.
A couple minutes because we have to walk to our learning area.
That's fair. You're not alone in that one.
Well, that's what I was going to say, depending on where you're at, because like at Vail, we meet at the base. It's a 15-minute gondola ride just up to the top.
Interesting.
So it could be 25, 30 minutes. You meet them at the bottom. You introduce yourself. You walk over. Got to throw in the lift line time as well. So, yeah.
And Vail's got to work on that experience, don't they? What else? Who else has got one? Go.
So for me, especially with beginner groups, it can be like 3 seconds, because the first thing I do is I go into an equipment check and ask them, hey, do you know how to put your foot in the binding? When you get those folks that come in with the pants tucked into their boot, they're total beginners.
Corey, that's well said, Marshall.
So if you're not including like strapping on a board, at Snowmass down at our lineup, we have those balance boards that we bring out while everyone is waiting. So the kids are already getting on a board like as soon as they've been introduced to the instructor.
That's awesome. So it sounds like it's as much as 1 minute all the way up to at least to be on a snowboard, right? So almost right away to as much as 30 minutes in Kevin's description of trying to get up the gondola at Vail, depending on the lift line status, right? So how could you get into activity rather than discussion, like where we're talking about the different parts of the snowboard? How could you just get into activity that's engaging? You guys, give me a few ideas of engaging activity.
Balance board.
Balance board. There's one. Double use.
Introducing yourself to the whole class.
So that's kind of part of the introduction. But okay, what would be a totally engaging experience in your guys' mind? It doesn't have to be snowboarding. Like, what could you do in a lesson in the first 30 seconds where you came right out of the box without saying much that would be something entertaining or enjoyable to do right away? An easy, fun thing.
High five.
High five. Boom. That's a good one. That's physical interaction. Mike.
I got one. Whilst introducing yourself, you throw the glove around, so it's a bit of hand-eye coordination and warm up while introducing.
Right. Okay, that's a good one. Who else had one?
You play the spirit animal game. You got to introduce yourself, tell me the spirit name, and remember the person that before you.
Okay, so spirit animal. Fun gamifying the name game. Clay.
Just like tell a joke, something funny.
Okay, that's good. That's it. Now we're getting there. Have any of you guys ever carried like a ball or a hacky sack with you to a lesson?
Michelle wrote she just wrote that they had a hacky sack at Breck, and we had an instructor at Snowmass that would bring a hacky sack.
That is awesome. I'll take you guys back to the science of fun thing and the juggler guy. If you guys remember that story I told about, a lesson with a juggler, lesson with a full cert, and the juggler was very engaging. They played right away. They got right into playing and doing something that anybody could do right away. It's incredible. And here's the other piece. I'll share this with you. And when I do an introduction anymore, because Marshall brought up, getting their name, it's useful and it's powerful. Remembering names is incredibly important, especially in business. But in terms of the experience, it's possible to learn names while they move. They can be moving as you learn their names. They can be buckling in, learning balance. And, for me, an example is when I roll around the introduction, I got them buckling in, I got them moving up and down, I got them playing with different ideas. And each time somebody does something right or maybe wrong and they need support, that's when I ask them their name. And I'll be like, oh, it's so good that you did this, because other people are struggling with that too. Hey, everybody look at John. John's working on this. If you guys are struggling with this, here's how you overcome it. And then the group becomes engaged in intergroup learning there. It starts to become very dynamic. Okay. So I'll go back to my athletes piece, and then I'll throw this at you. With Toby Miller, it depends on his mood. He can listen for as long as 2 to 5 minutes, and as little as 3 seconds. So with Sean White, it was literally right now, or he was out of there. If I couldn't communicate something within 10 seconds, he would just take a lap. So there were a few times where we'd engage longer. And if I found something that was really important to him or he was scared, he would engage longer, but usually it was right then, right now. And I think the critical piece is recognizing who you're working with, what you're doing, the environment you're in, the types of learners they are, all these different pieces to understand just how limiting that attention span is. Okay. So on that note, I'm going to share one last little screen share with you, and then I'm going to wrap up after a little Q&A. Is that cool? Are you guys doing okay? Awesome. So you guys can probably see my desktop. Can you see the infographic again? Yes. Okay, so the good news, there are still ways to hold attention. This is a marketing piece where they're talking about how do you keep people's attention on a website, you know, and engaged in the marketing experience. And a couple of things that I really liked from this were be clear in your messaging. Well, earlier on, we were talking about what it looked like when people started to check out or if you've been presenting for too long. When you're thinking through your ideas as you speak, oftentimes you have to repeat yourself over and over until you learn how to say what it is that you wanted to say. How many of you have been caught talking through your ideas? Raise your hand if you've been caught talking through your ideas. Most of us do this at one point in time or another, right? Yeah, exactly. You're like, I think I know what it is, but I don't know how to say it yet. So you just start saying stuff and let it flow through your thoughts. So you have to cycle through it a few times. So clear in your messaging, and that comes with experience and repetition, right? And that's a hard thing to get to. So when you do a presentation from the hip like this is a little bit from the hip. There's some things in here that are very common to me, but some other things I'm working with that were a stretch. When it's from the hip and I know the information, I can talk about it forever. When it's from the hip and it's new information to me, I tend to cycle through my thoughts as I speak. Another one was keep your messaging short and sweet. Go back to that attention span thing. You've got to learn how to set the hook in 8 seconds or less. You really have to learn how to set your hook that fast. Your hook can be very simple. It's like, imagine going through the process of building. You're building a business, and you've got a 20-second window to tell the world everything about your business. What does that look like? Now make that a 10-second window. Now make that an 8-second window, and now make it a 6-second window. And ask yourself, is it possible to set the hook in that timeline? So if it's not, you may have to set bits of the hook intermixed with activity, because I'm not suggesting that you should never present. That's not the point of this idea. What I am suggesting is that you read your group and know when it's time to stop. Fair enough? Okay, so I think it was really interesting. Corey said something earlier, because even in this slide, it says average length watched of a single internet video is 2.7 minutes, and 59% of senior executives would rather watch a video than read text. That says it all. Most people are starting to prefer visual with auditory and reading all mixed together. If you think about that, they're trying to learn through multiple formats at the same time, because technology is allowing them to do that. And it's a unique thing that we battle with, because our ideas oftentimes take time to form, they take time to develop, and it can be quite a challenge. Okay, so on that, I'll put the question out to you guys. Is everybody clear on the idea now of getting out of presentation and into process? Any questions about that? Thought now, okay, then I'll throw it out the other way. What are your guys' quick hits, your takeaways, the things that stood out the most to you in the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
Chris, I'll kind of give you my perspective. I think about a couple things. I always think about anytime I'm asked to give a presentation, I always think about two main things. One, first and foremost, is the audience. Who's the audience? Like, who are they? Like, for example, this audience is a bunch of snowboarders that love to get outside, do things. So possible attention span might be a little bit less, but then there's a lot of academics in this group as well. And then the second thing I always think about is the content and what's the best way to deliver the content. So those two things have a heavy play. I would say I try not to, the way I deliver information is always going to be different depending on the content and the audience.
Right. Well said. I almost identical in thought. Who else? Key takeaways.
One thing that, can you hear me?
You're next, Claire.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Go, Clay.
one thing that I took away was like what you're saying about the talking through the concepts, and like when you're teaching, like especially those upper level things, like you're gonna have to go over those concepts and like have taught those a lot of times before you're gonna be actually good at teaching that concept. You're not gonna be just amazing at teaching a concept right away. It's just, it doesn't happen like that.
That's a great point. I think a couple of things that come to mind for me there are that one, that great instructors don't become great instructors unless they have a chance to try and fail, right? So you got to have that shot to get out there and earn the experience. And the other piece is you got to practice. So you have to go through and practice ideas, especially, you know, if you have an experience once in a lesson where, you know, you didn't know what to say and you get caught in that thought loop and you're trying to figure it out, like that's a perfect opportunity to make notes and then start finding other answers and start practicing through your next presentation. I think that's huge. Any of you guys going for especially if you're going for like a regional trainer in your division, or if you're planning to go for national team, you definitely don't want to stand up in front of that group and figure out if your presentation is a good idea. In that moment, that would be a fail. You want to go in with something chiseled, even if someone's seen it before. Go in with something chiseled. Go with something that you have high confidence in, because then you're going to be able to speak from a place, to your point, Clay, where you have so much experience that, back to Tony's point even, you can manipulate the information and the way you're delivering it to fit the room, to fit the people in the room, which is really important. I was presenting in Ushuaia in 2016, or it might have been 2015. I think we were there in it's 2015 that we were there, I think. And fall of 2015. And I presented in a decommissioned prison crematorium. They called it the bakery, but I'm like, those openings for the big stone ovens were far too big to be just for bread. But anyways, we're in this crazy place and it's creepy and feels haunted and strange, and the sound was terrible and the light was awful. But it turned out to be one of the best presentations because the content I was confident with, and the people in the room who all spoke different languages, and I was so concerned about the language barrier, all those things, I was able to make it work, simplify it where it needed to be simplified, and deliver it. And that is a challenge. It's very hard. Claire, did you have a thought?
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I guess the takeaway that I had is how much association helps. That whole exercise you did with, like, you were relating things to like how it felt, a body part kind of like brought it to bigger picture stuff, like the fingers aren't holding on to information, or like you're bowing on your knees. You were like associating so many different points that something would have grabbed. And I think that's awesome. I've taught so many lessons where I've taught them how to turn, but they don't call them S turns. They call them like every other kind of turn. Like I do a hot chocolate turn and a seatbelt turn. And so like, I'm like, do a hot chocolate turn. And they're like, oh, okay. And they do the right turn. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like they don't know it's like a toe to heel turn. They just think it's this turn that has hot chocolate base. Like
that's when you know you're mastering. That's when you know you're owning and mastering ideas, right? Because you can start to call it different names. How many of you, before Corey, you're next, how many of you can remember what picture was in the locket?
Tony making out.
With? I just got flipped off. Sorry. Okay, Corey, you're up.
I really like this whole idea, especially for as a trainer, like with our new hires, because as a new hire, kind of what Clay was saying, if you haven't taught something so many times, you're like kind of going through this presentation, you just kind of keep talking at it instead of letting people do it. So this is actually something that I wrote down that I'd love to bring to new hire training. Like, it's about the process. It's about like going through the motions instead of so much talking. We get so many people that love to talk, and it's like, we know you love snowboarding. We know you love to talk, but like people are here and they want to move.
Amen.
So that's what I took from it.
If you want a good challenge, that if you work at Aspen, just go try to train Seth Johns. He has to move. I love Seth. He's one of my close friends, but if you talk to that guy for too long, he's checked out. Tony, and then Kevin.
Yeah, I'd like to make two quick points. One, when I a few years back when I was training manager at Copper, one of my big things that I wanted to do and achieve was just see the differences in culture between alpine training and snowboard training. So I went out and spent several days, all day, watching alpine training.
What were the keys?
The biggest thing was this: with the alpine side and the skiers, those groups could literally sit around and talk about things, but everybody in that group, they had massive groups, was engaged in the conversation.
Yes.
Talk about like boot work for literally like 40 minutes. And I'm there on my skis and I'm like freezing. I'm like, Jesus, we gotta go. So the good thing was that they're engaged and they're getting real techie. The bad thing was that obviously they did less skiing. But on the snowboard side was so like, we get so creative. They're so animated and doing all these crazy things that sometimes we get so animated and creative that we lose the point, and the overall goal of what we're trying to achieve is lost. So there's pros and cons of both sides of that. And to that point, what I wanted to do is just, as you were kind of getting into this presentation today, I was just thinking back, wow, in the last 2.5 to 3 weeks, since we've been doing these and all the other ones, I've seen a lot of different presentations, some good, some average, right? And like, it's been interesting. And you see some people that presented some concepts for the first time, or they presented to a group of people they don't know for the first time. And as you know, as anyone, as you presented a few times, this is a super awkward situation because you don't get interaction. And you're the only presenter that I've seen where you're like, please, everybody unmute your screens because I want you talking, talk over me, talk with me. Where a lot of people are like, no, everybody mute. I just want to talk at you. And it's quite different. So it's, I think that's a great, somebody like yourself that's presented quite a few times knows the keys to make it more real.
Thank you, Tony. And I'm going to add two things. One thing on something that I think Corey said, and one thing that you're saying. One is, I know that if I don't allow you to engage and allow you to drive the learning, that I will lose you. It doesn't matter how big the group can be 1,000 people, but if in that if the majority of the 1,000 people cannot somehow influence their experience, they have better things to do and think about than listen to us. And it's not a rude thing. It's just how our minds work. And unfortunately, we've been conditioned this way. It's naturally happening to you. You can fight it all you want, but it is happening to you. Unless you maybe check out for years from social media and technology, that attention span thing is real. It's very hard to manage. And Corey, back to you, a comment is, one thing I tell new hires at new hire trainings all over the country is I've been to so many this year. It's crazy. It's a blur. But I always tell them that you got to set up a real basic filter for what a new instructor should do and shouldn't do. What's okay to do, what isn't okay. Anything that will make them a better snowboarder is okay. And anything that is fun and engaging is okay. Pretty much everything else, right? If it's going to lead to a better connection and more fun, or it's going to help them snowboard, those are things you should do. Everything else you should try to get rid of. All of it. I mean, all of it. I'll challenge this whole group. Pare down your teaching experiences to where you get completely out of your own arrogance, out of your own knowledge, and go back to what Conrad and I were talking about in the very beginning, right? Getting back to that place of having a totally engaged and open mind as a trainer, the place of almost ignorance, but not possible ignorance. What did you call it again, Conrad?
Presence.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I said. But imagine boiling it down to where you trimmed all the nonsense, all the wasted time. When I train skiers, Tony, because I train a lot of skiers too, I go through their flatland progressions and I show them how to use every second to its fullest to help engage a new skier's ability to actually manage the skis and maintain balance, rather than wasting any time on nonsensical boot work or shuffle steps or things that are just sort of experiential. Let's try something, right? Get it focused on what will lead to the outcome of them turning their skis and stopping, which is really important. Kevin, you had your hand up a while back.
Yeah. One of the things I really take away from all of your presentations, and I think it kind of is a summation of what Tony and a few other people have said, is engaging and re-engaging. They're allowing us to talk over each other, the distractions. It allows us to actually re-engage with you more quickly. I think about it from this standpoint, if my mind wanders, you've given me the ability to wander, and just as fast as I start thinking about this, it's just as fast as I'm going to come back to you and what you're actually talking about.
Right.
So finding ways to engage and continue to re-engage the group, and reading when you're losing the group. I know for me, one of the things I do, if you guys noticed in my last presentation, I'll leave little things out and then I'll come back to them.
Yeah.
So I kind of leave you on a cliffhanger and we move on. You're like, oh man, but what about, oh yeah, he came back to it, so I re-engaged you. Yeah. So just how do we continue to engage and re-engage the group?
Well, I think it's important for this, the self-confidence and self-esteem of the group, you know, pulling things out of other ideas that I've seen in these presentations, that the environment is supportive of someone contributing. So if you got a hot idea and you don't get to say it, that makes this experience far less valuable. It's important for people to be heard. It's important for us to listen to them. And it's very important for us to commend them and support them in their thinking and push them to continue that thinking and grow it, because that's where the power lies. The power lies in their contribution, not yours. The power lies in their voice, not yours. The opportunity for your students to learn is really probably more in their hands than it is yours. And it's when you accept that you're highly valuable just the way you are, but you don't have to be the leader, the center of attention, the best at anything. It'd be way better if all your students were better than you. I mean, think of it that way. It'd be so much better if you worked yourself out of a job faster than any other instructor on earth. If you were the fastest person to not be needed by your students, imagine what that means. It's an incredible thing. But the way you get there is through empowering their involvement, empowering their engagement, and being very selective and very impactful when you present versus when you allow the rest of the group to engage. I'm going to wrap it up right there because we're right at about 6 o'clock and I want to make sure Conrad has enough time to do what he does. Any final questions though, before I go?
No, thank you very much, Chris. That was sweet. I want to reflect on that last piece you said, and I think it is like super telling of the people who are really good at presenting on whatever it is. But it's like the Dalai Lama sort of thing. It's like, don't really say anything, you know, or just like suggest something and like let the other people run with the ideas.
Can I share a note I made from the Dalai Lama just recently here? And I'm by no means a Buddhist, but I love I love a lot of the stuff he has to say. He said, self-centeredness creates a distance from others, leading to dishonesty, fear, and anger. This is how disturbing emotions work. While fear, hatred, and anger are bad for our health, concern for others leads to inner self-confidence and inner strength while helping to reduce anger. I loved that quote, and I'll go ahead and copy and paste it so you guys can read it because I know how memory works. But let me see if I can actually do it. But I really think that concept of focusing on others is where it's when you become so powerful. Sorry, I'm trying to multitask, which is why I'm circular in my talking. There you go. I just posted it. Anyways, well said, Conrad. Thank you. Thanks so much, you guys. I really enjoy listening to your presentations, your comments, and having the chance to present for you and with you. It's been an honor. It's so cool to be in front of such a talented group of human beings. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Sweet. All right. Well, I'll get started here. Can everybody please just stand up and wiggle around for a bit? Just stand up, get your body moving, just get it going, get some wiggling, get some movement action. Oh yeah, just walk around the room a little bit, get the blood pumping. Yep. Okay. All right. So, okay, stay standing if you can in a place somewhere you don't have to have the screen on you, whatever. I'm going to have the screen on me just so you can see my body. You won't be able to see my face, but that's okay. I'm going to talk about some how to make turns cool and like do cool turns and like make snowboarding more high performance-y. I'm going to talk about some rear leg stuff, some trailing leg stuff, just because I think that, you know, we spend a lot of time on the front leg. And let's talk about the back leg because the back leg's cool too. So I want you guys to move your legs a little bit. Move your legs. Get one leg moving, get the other leg moving. Okay. So as you're doing that, talk to me. How are you getting one leg to move one way, one leg to move the other way? I'm thinking about my feet a little bit. Who's got something?
Femur.
Femur.
I'm shifting balance from one foot to the other.
Shifting balance, kind of moving in your hips a little bit. Cool.
I'm moving my knees.
Moving your knees. Cool.
Adducting and abducting.
Adducting like this, Lynn?
Highly technical terms, Lynn.
Yeah, how do you do this if you're strapped to a snowboard? But that's cool. Sweet. Anybody else? All good? Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm thinking about my feet. I'm thinking about like the E version of my feet, or like the inversion of my feet, like this. And what that does to then my femurs. I think Claire might have said to the femurs, like one rotating or the other one rotating. Okay, so I want to put you in a position, all right? So in your forward direction of travel, you're going to try to externally rotate your lead femur and internally rotate your trailing femur. And this will create a bit of eversion on your lead foot and a bit of inversion on your trailing foot. Probably, right? Okay, feel this position. Cool. All right, now reverse it, go the other way. Cool, and come back to center. All right, cool. Everybody can come sit down again if you haven't already. Cool. All right. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about some turny stuff, some more self-centered snowboarding stuff, because we've been talking a lot about training or I don't know, presenting to groups and self-efficacy and all that stuff. And I'd like to talk a little bit about like the hard skill stuff and actually getting better at snowboarding yourself. So I'd like to talk about rear leg steering, because I think the rear leg is where the magic happens personally. Like the front leg is like foundational. It's like everything kind of starts there, but like the rear leg is where you can like add or subtract performance. It's where you can like stop spins and rotations. And so I just want to have a little bit of a conversation about that. So I want to throw this out there. What are some of the pros or cons in your own thinking of having your rear leg internally rotated? So that's where you drove both legs in the same direction. What are some thoughts?
Like for sure, like carving, like the finish of your carve, like getting that back end of your board to really tip up, you're going to need that knee to move that way, or at least I do.
Okay, cool. You can probably do it other ways.
You can, but I think I get like a really like sweet carve that way, and it helps.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. Anybody else?
Can you restate the question one more time really quick? Just reframe it for me.
What are some pros and cons of having your rear leg or your trailing leg moving towards the center of your snowboard or the base of support?
Kyle?
I'll throw a couple out there. And I would say, by the way, before I answer this, my answer directly reflects, depending on what your back angle is at, it's gonna have some different reaction. But I think one, you can add more flex to the board. I think you can add more rotation through larger joints and larger levers, be it your hips and femurs and things like that. So I think to Clay's point, like she's probably feeling the ability to actually steer a little bit through that carve turn. We talk about that when you get into icier situations. And I think you can also when you get into that situation, you can also probably get a little bit more tilt on your heel side turn a little bit. So there's a lot more larger levers you can use on your heel side turn that you don't generally have in a totally ducked out, for example, aligned position.
Yeah, totally. If you're in a position to stand or have your feet on the ground, try to do this. Try to internally rotate your trailing leg. Okay, and now you've got this angle. Now try to apply pressure to it, like vertically, pressure. For me, it doesn't feel good, personally. I think that would be a big con, is like the pressure absorption or management in that position is really limited because my femur isn't lined up straight over my knee, so I'm not able to squat. Yeah, Chris.
Well, I was just gonna, my comment was gonna be that when you put that kind of tension on the knee specifically, but all three of the joints, you know, connected to the legs, you limit range of motion and you create a lot of stress on ligaments and tendons that it's not, that, you know, your leg isn't really prepared for. So yeah, it doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel as stable. There are some, I mean, you're not asking pros yet, but there are some pros, right?
I said pros and cons, but yeah.
You said pros. Okay. So pros, style in around the knee indie grabs. I mean, so much style when that rear leg tips in and you get around the knee to grab indie, looks way better. It's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. Anybody else got some pros and cons of that? Yep. KB.
Well, one of the things I think about, and it's a pro, when I'm riding really tight trees and I need that quick performance, like tighter than tight turns that I just don't create with my front foot, being able to drive that back foot a little bit allows me to make those tighter turns. The one thing I do say, though, is it does put you in a compromising position in terms of managing pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I felt that in a pipe, driving that back knee a little too much and strained some ligaments before. So it's hard to manage the pressure.
So KB, why can you get your turns to happen tighter when you drive with your rear knee?
Why are they happening tighter?
Yeah, how is that, like, what is the rear knee driving affecting this? How is that affecting?
It's actually creating more flex in the center, creating a tighter turn shape through more flex.
Yeah, sweet. And I would say that back to Clay's point in like her carving,
So
getting
the side cut.
carve, right? It's probably because of that. You could also maybe talk about like the snapback, the decambering and recambering of your board, because you are decambering it more in that situation, and then it has more snapback to recamber.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You're saying the decambering and the recambering is creating a tighter turn?
Well, yeah. I mean, no. So the decambering, it depends on the carbon profile of your board, probably. But if you bend your snowboard more, you will decrease the radius of your turn shape if you're on edge. So it'll be a tighter turn. And then that snapback is like the performance that you're getting out of your board.
Totally tracking.
Sweet. Anybody else? No. The big thing for me is like the transitionary period between one turn and the next turn. It's like, I don't know, hands up, who used like a little scoot move at the end of their turn? I know I do. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean.
So in that scoot move, if your front leg is a bit more extended, or maybe in a aggressive situation, it's unweighted or in the air, your back leg is the one that's really controlling where your snowboard's going through that transitionary period. And if you haven't set your line perfectly coming out of one turn, that back foot steering then will allow you to more quickly or less quickly, depending on the situation, adjust where that turn needs to be. For me, that's pro, I think. Who has seen someone ride with, you know, kind of the opposite, like super duck, like knees all the way out? Has anybody seen Michael Blanton's Spicky ride? He presented a couple of weeks ago, and that was pretty sweet. So his riding style is like his knees are really far out. He's super duck stance kind of guy. What does it do to your snowboard if you're more in that knees out, external rotation of the femurs, eversion of the feet?
Flattens your board.
Yo.
Flattens your board.
Flattens your board. It could even like increase the amount of camber in your board, possibly, depending.
I think it really depends on the natural, you know, I guess physiology of that person's body, right? So like when we widen our feet, when we move our feet apart naturally, for most people, the toes tend to rotate out. So if he's got a wide stance and his and he hasn't gone beyond that natural sort of split that develops, then probably has limited impact. But if he's going beyond that and he's creating tension in his body, or it's forcing his legs to move in a way that applies pressure towards the nose and tail, then certainly, yeah, it could increase camber and have a pretty limiting effect. Also, once again, if the legs are rotated too far, then that'll limit range of motion as well.
Yeah. And the thing I think about, if you're increasing pressure that way, you're digging the board down at the camber points or beyond that, or whatever the camber profile of the board is. So you're effectively increasing the effective edge, where the prior one, you were decreasing the effective edge and trying to bend the board in more. So you've probably got more grip, right? In a lot of situations, but you have less rotational capabilities probably in the snowboard. Okay.
Hey, Conrad, sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I just realized I have to go get something at a store that closes at 6:30 my time. And if I get back on in time, I'll see you guys then. But I wanted to say thank you, and I'll see you guys next time if I don't make it back.
Cool. See you,
Chris.
Chris.
Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Bye.
Being here. All right. So if you guys are game for it and want to stand up one more time, we'll just play with this in some jumping and spinning around. So I'm going to do it. You don't have to. You can just pin me in your video, and that'll be fine if you want to. But if you want to play around, that's cool too. I'll put this back a little bit so you can see me a little bit more. See, the house is a complete mess. All right. Sweet. So just let's try the neutral position, like normal snowboard stance, not trying to turn our legs at all, and just jump up and do a 180. There. All right. Now try to rotate your legs in the direction that you're going to spin before you take off. Okay, cool. All right. Now let's try and do the speaky Michael Blanton thing. If you haven't seen him ride, he rides like this kind of all the time. Let's try to spin around, but keeping our legs like this. Okay. And then last one is try to scissor kick your legs to get that rotation to go. Sweet. All right. Come on back. All right. What do you guys notice when you're spinning around with those different leg positions?
Like the super duck one, like your rotation in your hips is just so limited when you set your feet like that you're gonna super limit your ability to spin, even if it's just a 180.
Cool.
I felt like when my knees were going in the direction of the spin, the spin wanted to happen and it wanted to go that direction. But with that being said, with my feet really wide, I felt like it was easier to land and feel more stable as opposed to trying to keep my knees going the same direction.
Okay, sweet. Anybody else?
I felt like when I had both of my legs going in the same direction, I felt the spin start to unwind in my hips. And when I had my legs more ducked out, I felt like the motion had to be initiated with a big upper body kind of movement to a 180, as opposed to feeling it kind of unwind. So,
yeah. Sweet. Yeah, that lower leg. And then that scissor kick thing, the last one that we did, I don't know if anybody was really cognizant of what their legs were doing, but when you were doing that, more than likely, if one leg was moving one way and one leg was moving the other way, you were actually getting an internal rotation of your rear leg, probably, and an external rotation of your front leg. So just something to think about. So yeah, I just wanted to have a discussion around rear leg stuff, because it's like it's a lot in the certification path and in the instructional area, and even in like the athlete coaching at maybe a lower level, where you're talking a lot about the front leg and how we're turning our snowboard and driving it from our front, but we're not really talking about our back leg a lot. So I just want to get some thoughts. Is this gelling with you guys? Is this not? Am I preaching to the choir? Have you guys, been talking about this for a long time already, or is it something new to you guys? Yeah, Corey.
I personally ride a lot with my back leg. I've been told by Tony that I do too much steering with my back leg. So I have tried to do more with my front leg, and I think it's because I ride regular, but I'm definitely very right leg dominant, but it is my back leg. So I kind of rely on it sometimes. And I'm very conscious of it. So I actually ride a lot with like my back knee riding forward, like we were talking about earlier. To me, that is comfortable. I enjoy it.
KB.
Yeah, so hey, I like the topic and where you're headed and some of the exercises, because you can actually feel what that rear leg is doing almost more than you can on the front leg. But I've been preaching back leg steering. I too have been dinged at times for using my back leg a bit too much. But with my athletes, especially when I was coaching border cross, we talked a lot about the back foot, being able to hold that clean line. It doesn't really, yes, initiate it at the front, but at some point your front foot is maxed out. And if you don't get the back foot involved, you're going to slip out on the back end of the carve, right? Or maybe you need to adjust your line at high speed. So you need to get that board to decamber a little bit using that back foot. And then the other place that I think we use it a lot, and it's a lot more involved at the initiation of turns, is in POW, right? Your front foot's still moving, but typically your front foot is light. So a lot of that movement and freedom comes out of your back foot, your back, ankle, and knee. And so those are two places where I think it's critical to actually you focus a little bit more on the back foot.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before you talk, Tony, just to go back to Corey's point of like having that being your most comfortable stance, that kind of goes more towards like the SBINZ, like that performance stance, right? That we were talking about in Jake Zope's thing a while ago. And I think it's a cool place to be. It unlocks a few different things. Yeah, anyway, just riffing on that. Go for it, Tony.
Yeah, and I appreciate what Corey and KB were just saying. I definitely like working my back leg quite a lot, to be honest. And I find that I probably, from a feeling perspective, from a kinesthetic perspective, I probably work my back leg more than my front leg, because I work the back leg more at the end of the turn and the front leg more at the beginning of the turn. And more of the pressure is built up through the end of the turn. So I'm feeling that more at the end of the turn. So I think I rely smaller movements and more precise movements with my front leg, and then more power movements and building energy and managing energy and being precise with that energy management at the end of the turn. I also feel that I definitely tend to try to land like on bigger jumps and things like that, like with my back leg coming out of like spins and stuff like that. I don't know if you guys have played with that, but that's kind of in the last few years, a lot of coaches have been talking more about trying to land bigger tricks with your back leg versus trying to land 2 feet at the same time. And that's been awesome. I've been using it myself and coaching it. But it's a great piece. And it's funny because when I blew my ACL a couple of years ago, I was so stressed that like, oh my God, how am I going to make a turn? And really, it's amazing how much I rely on my back leg. And so now it's actually worked to my advantage where I'm not overpowering the front leg.
I'm going to add to that. I think it's all situational. So you got to realize who you're talking to, how you're talking to, and what you're talking about when you come to these things, because they're very specific. So Corey, what was the feedback that you were doing? What were you doing when you got that feedback? I'd like to know that.
I believe it was, God, I want to say probably certain 3 bumps, This was probably like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't even remember. But it was, I think it was in my Cert 3, and it wasn't necessarily he wasn't giving me the feedback in a negative way, but it was more like, I noticed that you're doing this. I want to see you bring it over here. It was kind of like he wanted to see where my range was. And I want to say it was bumps, but I could be wrong.
So just kind of going back to the whole fear, when we're trying something new, we tend to go towards the tail. And the whole thing of encouraging people to go towards that lead leg is just to center them out a little bit more over the board, rather than saying it's a particular foot that you should be driving through. Because I think both have the same functionality, but then again, it comes down to the task. The task at hand determines where you should be driving or riding through.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to go to the point Tony had there about the twist, about landing with a little more back foot and initiating twist with your back foot, not with your front foot. Because I think that's pretty cool. It's pretty sweet to be able to like engage that rear edge, that trailing foot, rear foot, that edge in the snow, and stop a spin or hold a calf. Like, I don't know how many of you have tried just like going down a green run or whatever and just trying to initiate twist with your back foot and try to carve or hold an edge. But it works. It's sweet. You don't really have to do anything. You just like engage your back foot. Yeah, go for it, Claire.
I wanted to ask you and Tony, I guess, to clarify a little bit more about landing on your back foot off of big jumps and spins, kind of what your personal preferences or your idea about what the benefit is.
If you want, like, I'll take that. So there's a couple things. One is, for example, if you're landing on big jumps, you can manage the pressure over a longer period of time versus managing the pressure all at once. You can also manage the pressure through the flex of your snowboard a little bit. And then you can also look to catch the landing if you're coming out of a spin. So you catch the landing and then set your front foot down versus trying to land on a set edge and stop the rotation in the spin. Similar to it would be a similar idea to like going into like a rail and like an urban approach rail, and you catch the side of the rail and then roll up on top of it as you slide down it. So here it is, we're catching the landing with our tail and then riding out of it. But I encourage you to check out like some of the videos of the big airs at the X Games and things like that, and see how many of those cats in the US Open and stuff like that are landing back foot first.
I've definitely.
Are you talking about? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Claire, check out, if you watch Tommy Bennett spin, he's notorious for locking in that back edge with his back foot. His front foot, when he lands, the board is pretty flat, and you'll see him deliberately drive the back knee to lock the edge in. And it just snaps in so quick and tight, and he's able to ride out of a lot of things because of it.
Cool. Yeah, I think I knew about those two first concepts, but not necessarily the stopping the rotation or like setting an edge from back to front. So.
Yeah, I want to talk about a little bit more like more natural terrain features like drops or that sort of thing, because to Tony's point, you definitely can use the flex of the snowboard to absorb some of that landing impact. And if you're dropping to a less than ideal sloped landing, if it's a little flat, you can use that back foot, front foot to kind of alleviate some of that pressure increase, which is pretty sweet. And you'll see a lot of people when they come off a big drop land, and they land pretty 2 foot centered, and then they'll kind of like wash out on their heel side edge because it's too much pressure all at once and they can't handle it. And they're also maybe a little scared. So instead of having their knees go straight into their armpits, they'll just kind of rotate out of it a little bit. I don't know if you guys have seen that in the past, but that's happened to me. I don't know if it's happened to you in the past as well, but it's definitely something that I think about.
So see, the benefit is as you're doing a 1-2 landing, spreading that time out so you have more time to absorb all the impact or like the pressure coming down.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can also feel out the surface as well. Like when you're landing with your back foot a little first, you have some time with that back leg to either initiate a little bit of twist to get an edge set in there, or not, or allow your front knee to be a bit softer or firmer depending on the conditions that you're landing in, if you don't know.
Well, a good way to think about it, because I was thinking about how you land and what physically is happening. Think about a plane. When it lands back wheels first, and then the nose drops, because what's happening as it lands, the plane is still being pulled that way. So it's actually gravity's helping alleviate some of the pressure off of the back foot until the front foot hits. And then that's because if it was a gradual, gives you more time to prepare, and then it lessens the impact.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Easy's kids jumping around in their underwear, and it's hilarious. I totally agree though. It like totally alleviates the pressure. Yeah, Corey, did you have something to say?
It might be slightly off topic, and it's okay if we don't want to open up a whole can of worms, but going into Claire's question and what Tony was talking about, landing a little more back foot than front foot. Do you guys ever talk about landing heel tail or toe tail, like getting specific with that? Why are you laughing? Tony's laughing, Mike's laughing.
So I'm not going to answer that because I'm not doing any huge spins of big park jumps. That's just not me. If you know me, you know that's not me. I'm trying to land like as straight as possible off big drops. Personally, that's just me. Does anybody have anybody who coaches or maybe does spin big off some bigger jumps?
I will explain it, but I would love it if somebody else would like to explain it.
Anybody?
Mike.
Mike.
I was gonna say again, it's all very situational. Like what Tony's talking about
Right.
is very different from what you're gonna experience in, a beginner's park or wherever. It's all about having those techniques at your disposal as to get you out of trouble or maybe alleviate some of that pressure that, if you've been jumping all day, your ankles are going to get sore. So it's all to do with at the right time, at the right moment. And then also exactly what kind of axis are you coming off at that particular time? Does it really put you in that position to be landing like that? Just for instance, like a wildcat, Tony's favorite trick. I would not say to Tony, try and land that on your tail because he's just going to manual out of it. So again, it's also very situational, but it is a tool. It's a great tool to have. So don't discard it, use it to your advantage, but make sure it's at the right application.
Yeah, I kind of think about like where the forces are coming from. Like, for example, to Mike's point there in a wildcat, right? Your forces are coming, like you're coming into that landing. You're already coming heavy towards that back foot. So to try to land on that back foot, you're probably going to blow out of that, where you're coming out of a rotation into KB's point where like Tommy will do it quite often. He'll land on his back foot and he'll catch it with the side of his tail. Like he'll catch that landing with the side of his tail versus the end of his tail. So when he does that, it stops it. And then you can see he'll catch it and then his front foot will come down right into the landing, kind of down like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's several different applications. Then the reason you see it on bigger jumps as well is because bigger jumps generally have real steep landings, like almost to 40-degree landings. Like you look at for example, the last big jump that I was watching was at the US Open at Vail, and the landing was real steep. You see guys coming out of, the triples, even the guy coming out of the quad, and those landings are firm, and they're definitely setting those landings on their tail and then slapping down the nose.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about like some other applications because we've talked a bit about jumping and freestyle and spinning around. I think to Tony's point, or Mike's point about it's the get you out of trouble sort of move. It's the ability to be like, oh shit, I need to readjust what I'm doing. And that's like coming off a lot of the back foot. Like usually when I'm in variable terrain or if I'm in bumps or if I'm doing some, skidder turns down, whatever. And, now there's a dirt patch in front of me. It's that back foot that's usually driving some sort of change out of my turn shape or creating more pressure to ollie over something. I just feel like it's that back foot that really allows me to change what I'm doing. Front foot, not so much, personally. That's just me. Does anybody have thoughts on that?
Well, when you think about like riding steeps or riding, like steep bumps, like Prima Pronto Highland over in Vail, or some like Mary Jane or something that's super steep, and you're trying to do zipper line bumps. If you're not finishing and using that back foot, there's no way you're going to zipper line those kind of bumps, just trying to use merely your front foot. And the steeper the terrain gets in some of those chutes, if you're not finishing that turn with the back foot and managing that energy and power all the way through, you're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely. I kind of like, I thought about this earlier, and I was like, well, it's kind of like to Tony's thing about like the drive versus ride thing. The people who are using their back foot at the end of their turn, or to get out of trouble, or to stop a spin or whatever, those are the people who are like actually driving their snowboard and like utilizing it to its full abilities. People who are off the front foot primarily and not utilizing one side or another, and they're just, mono-sided. Even you could be mono-sided on your back foot. But the people who don't have that, dual side of their snowboard as an access for movement are the people who are more riding their snowboard versus driving. Would you guys agree or disagree?
Yeah, I totally agree. I kind of think about like my snowboard, like, there's two halves, and like I got side cut at the back. I have pressure to apply in the back, like, and not using it more than my front foot. But like, yeah, like you're saying, in those steep, bumpy situations, actually, as Kevin is saying, that you need to use like all the tools in your toolbox to drive your snowboard, like you said. And if you're only using your front foot, you're only using half your tools, is kind of the thing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Clay. Hey, if you guys want another, like a visual of this, you can look at the matrix, and there's some squirt turns on the matrix, and you can see that right there. And you can see kind of what KB was talking about how if you work the tail in like some steeper bumps, you can get that little bit of stall on there. But that's something I'm sure most of you guys are doing anyways.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. Well, that's pretty much all I had. I just wanted to bring some more awareness to the rear foot. If you guys want to riff on this a little bit longer, I am totally cool to keep riffing on some back leg stuff, because I think it's super cool.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what kind of beginner progressions you use to engage the back foot.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think a big thing is going to be like twist, right? Because like you're initiating with that front foot, but the back foot is like the second part of that. And there's a few different ways to do the twist. You can either do it like totally muscularly with your ankles, or you can hinge kind of at the hips to get your femurs to rotate to get that twist going. I think that's pretty cool. And then, rotating forward to kind of close the shoulders, we'll get the board to twist in the opposite direction. Cody, then Drew, I guess. Does anybody else have any other beginner progressions for more back foot stuff?
My students already do a lot of back foot.
Yeah. Kind of to Mike's point, it's like fear driven, right? It's like everybody goes there. You want to get them forward. But when you get to a high enough level, you're not maybe scared as much. So now you can go back, and there's cool stuff back there, I think.
100%.
Yeah. Cody, then Drew.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of tell you guys my first experience of kind of that back leg steering, especially, or like the back knee steering in particular. My first season out here, I had a trainer who decided that he wanted us to all do an alpine stance and try carving in an alpine stance, even not on an alpine board. You really start to feel the difference in performance when you have that back knee or that rear knee kind of pointing towards the nose of the board, and it just really kind of changed my perception of using that back.
Yeah. Who's ridden Posy or an alpine board? I have. It's pretty sick how much you can like bend the snowboard and get it to like really perform and spring back. It's like, it's awesome. Drew, then Corey.
I was thinking back to that earlier question of like beginner progressions. It might be a little bit more like intermediate progression, but when I do start talking about the back foot, a lot of times it's going to be a timing thing. and I'll have them, they're already used to initiating a turn with their front foot, and then I'll kind of have a complementary movement just a split second later with the back foot. So a lot of times when I get into a focus on the back foot, it becomes a timing issue. And then one tangent I wanted to add in was kind of like Conrad, how you kind of outlined it early on. There's no like necessarily right or wrong stance with that back foot. Different positions will give you different pros and cons. And I think depending on what style of riding we're all kind of aiming for, one thing that you can play with is what the angle of your back binding is, and is that giving you the most range of motion for the type of riding you want to do. I've done a lot of like playing around with my angles, and I do find that I focus on the rear foot angle a little bit more in terms of tweaking for comfort, which in turn relates to my range of motion.
So I just want to riff on that for a second, Drew. I don't know if you guys saw there was a White Lines article that put on not every, there was like 30 or 50, there was like 50 pro stance angles on there, which was pretty sweet. And if you want to go on White Lines, which is a UK publication for snowboard stuff, you can see like there's a ton of pro riders stance angles, like what they ride most of the time, which was pretty sweet to like go and like ride with those stance angles and then be like, hey, what's possible with this? So what I did was it was like late season, it was an A basin. I went and hiked East Wall a bunch of times, and I was like, yeah, I'll just like ride with all these different stances. And like Jeremy Jones is like all the way here. And like, you know, you've got like other people who are fully dark and just kind of seeing what happens. It was pretty cool. So yeah, I like that, Drew. Corey.
Again, similar to Drew, mine's a little more intermediate. If not, maybe even a little advanced, depending on where your intermediates are. But trying to drag the back knee on your toe side, and then just trying to get them to kind of bring that front knee forward and kind of feel that. And then on their heel side, and this is definitely more advanced, would be trying to drag your front hip. Trying to rotate those hips in that direction.
Yeah, that's sweet. Cool, guys.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting looking at everyone's angles. I just put up that comment. Like I ride 21 -12, but it's interesting how all you guys are pretty similar. Like a lot of 12 and 12s. Corey, I think you're 15-15. Real interesting. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah. Personally, I like this a lot because I ride like pretty directional boards most of the time, and I ride a relatively directional sort of stance. You can see up there I'm 18.6, -6 plus 18 -6. So I mean, for me, it's easier because of that stance angle to rotate more with the femur in the direction of travel. That's for me. Yeah. So does anybody have a feeling, KB kind of mentioned this earlier, but does anybody have a feeling of how they're controlling their like turns or their speed control through powder with that back foot steering? I know I do it a lot. Like every time I'm making like the finish of a turn or a slash or something, I'm like internally rotating to create that like slash sort of thing or a quick direction change at the end. Anybody? Nobody? That's fine.
Yeah, of course, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, cool. Anybody else got any riffs on this back leg stuff?
Here's a great one I started doing with my athletes is we were still training border cross, but using the pipe as an example. And what you're going to do is instead of buttering like center or from the back like we normally do, you're going to butter back foot. So say you're carving straight ahead and you're going to make you're going to make a toe side turn if you're goofy. You're going to butter and lock in the back foot and feel that explosion out of the tail when you change direction. So thinking about changing direction in a pipe, coming off the back foot a little bit more through the flat bottom. and then feeling that if you're going to spin it or whatever, and feeling that energy release so it shoots you into the next turn.
Totally. And that it kind of like comes a little bit to that fore aft realm now. And like we were talking a lot in that rotational realm, but that fore aft realm of getting the pressure release in the tail to shoot you forward to the nose at the start of the next turn, that's another kind of part of it that can increase performance as well. So I like that. Yo, Drew.
I think the more we all kind of understand how our back foot can complement our front foot, a clear area that we'll see progression, I think, is in our switch riding. I think a lot of us probably have movements where we engage our rear leg kind of naturally when we're riding in our forward stance, but then we forget about that rear foot when we get we'll forget about how to pair our front foot and our rear foot when we get into switch. So I challenge everyone to next time they're out working on their switch riding to we all know to initiate and kind of drive with that front foot, but keep a focus on that back foot as well when you ride switch and see what you can tweak there.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're not going to be on snow for a while, probably, or, if you don't have a nice little backyard area to go out and, spray some turns around on, a sweet cross training tool is skating. Like, this is sweet in skating, and you can adjust the angle of your back foot without having to do binding change stuff. So that's awesome. And you can figure out where that feels best for you. So if you got a skateboard lying around, it's a good cross train tool. Cool, guys. Has anybody got anything else?
I've got something.
Yep.
I've been working on how much rear leg rotation I've been using and the timing of it, especially on my toe to heel turns. And I've found that if my center of mass is too far aft, it's really difficult to get the timing correct.
Okay. And what if the timing's incorrect? What does that do to your turn?
It causes an extension movement out of the back ankle at the initiation.
Okay.
Has anyone played around with the timing at all like that? And then it depends what complementary movements you use with it to get the timing and the intensity right.
That's a good question. Yep. Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't really played around too much with the different complementary movements, because for me, at least, with the way that I ride my snowboard, it happens for me pretty naturally. It's a natural movement that comes to me. I know some people have to work on it a bit more, but it's cool to think about different complementary movements. Like you're saying complementary movements, Lynn, like upper body rotation or hip rotation or amount of front leg or back leg flexion or extension.
Yeah, lots of things like flexion of the lower spine or upper spine or abdominal tension in certain times and at certain parts of the turn. Or, there are a bunch of different movements different people use.
Yeah. I know the one that I use personally is I do use a lot of core tension to get me back over the front of my snowboard. If we're talking about that fore aft pressure release off the tail to the nose, I'm using a bit of that functional tension in my core to slingshot me forward into the new turn, personally.
Can you say that one more time?
I'm using some of the functional tension in my core to slingshot me, or to allow my body to be moved forward with the rebound from the tail to the nose. Personally. Yeah. Sweet, guys. All right. Well, if no one's got anything else, well, Corey does.
I'll add to your powder. I thought about it. I needed time to process it. I have been playing more with my back leg in the powder, at least rotating it forward as I'm riding. And I feel like it allows me to use my hips in a more aggressive way because it just gives me a little more range of motion, especially towards that heel side, I feel. And I've enjoyed that.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, next time you're out, if you're out sometime soon, that's cool. But if you're not, next season, maybe just play a bit more with the back foot, because I think it has the potential to unlock in a lot of people's snowboarding. People get pretty static, and playing there can allow some other stuff to happen. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, dude. That was good.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thanks, Conrad.
All right. Sweet. I'll pass it back to Lynn.